Hello and welcome back to the In News series. It's great to be back on screen and interact with you all in a better manner. So because of the COVID-19 cases, as these have come down in the recent days, that is why we have switched back to our on-shoot mode. So today I will try to explain you the CAPEX push in the budget. What about it? What is CAPEX that we are listening to this word so often? Why is it so important for us to understand the importance of CAPEX in the budget? So that is all we are going to talk about. And before we begin, I would like to tell you, not only from the perspective of prelims, the concept of capital expenditure, surety bond, green bond, digital rupee, all this is important, not only from the perspective of prelims, but also from the perspective of GS Mains paper 3rd. And nowadays we are seeing a trend in which topics are knowing no boundaries. They can span across various papers. So these are the many topics we are going to discuss. Now, as you can see this news piece in which it is written, infra push has larger lasting multiplier effect, will create demand and jobs. This is what are the words of Economic Affairs Secretary. Once you will become an IAS officer, you will also have to work. If you reach new heights, you will also work in the same manner by understanding and making understand the importance of such initiatives. So, according to him, that infra push has larger infrastructure push. Whatever monetary help is being given through allocation with respect to infrastructure, it will go on further to have multiplier effect. It will not only create demand but also jobs, and it will have a income trickle down effect. Income trickle down. So many people were saying about the budget that this budget did not do anything for the common man. This budget is not a budget that we expect specifically when 5 states are going to have an election. The thing is that this budget is very investment oriented, and CAPEX push has seen a lot of indulgence in this budget. What is it? Before that we will know about the news. So 35% increase has been done in the outlay of capital expenditure. CAPEX is the short form of capital expenditure in the financial year 2022-23. That is the year that is going to begin from April 1st, and this was in the speech of the finance minister. Also, rupees 5.5 lakh crore in the budget has been increased to rupees 7.5 lakh crore. As you can see, it is such a significant jump that we have to expect something of an income trickle down. And effective capital expenditure would be rupees 10.68 lakh crore or 4.1% of GDP in 2022-23. Capital expenditure differs from revenue expenditure in what sense? Capital expenditure is an expenditure that will go on for a long period of time. Revenue expenditure, on the other hand, is an expenditure which is of routine nature and it is for a short period of time. So capital expenditure can be explained like it is the amount spent by the government on the development of infrastructure, facilities and equipment. Now, infrastructure can go from physical infrastructure in the forms of roads, railways, connectivity projects. Not only that, but digital infrastructure is also being touted a very specific and significant part of the infrastructure this year. Specifically, if we talk about digital rupee, that is also a part of the infrastructure. And it also can be, capital expenditure can also be acquiring fixed asset. That means we are spending the amount on getting something that is of fixed nature through which we can generate jobs, demands, employment, such as land and investment by the government, which will give profits or dividends in the future. So this is capital expenditure. And if we talk about the various components, what is the government doing in the form of capital expenditure? First, we have to understand that capital investment, it holds a key to a speedy and sustainable revival. Suppose if in the budget the government would have said that yes, we are giving 5,000 rupees to each and every citizen of India. This is sort of an expenditure but it is not sustainable. Why? Because what happens to 5,000 rupees? I might spend it on shopping, or I might spend it on something that is not very profitable in the future. I might not invest it in something that will create employment opportunities for everyone. That's not happening if we, spend amount like this through the budget. So capital infrastructure is very important, and capital expenditure is very important for long-term benefits. Something which, if established sustainably, can provide livelihoods to many of the people for a longer period of time. And the economy has shown strong resilience to come out of the pandemic impact, strong growth. So because the economy is vibrant, there is demand, there have been FDI inflows at such a large scale that Indian economy has proved to be pretty resilient even in the pandemic, specifically in the second wave. Why? First wave, everything was locked down. Second wave was more outrageous, and it waged a war against the Indian citizens much more than it did in the first wave. But supply side was not blocked totally. So it has shown that even at the second wave, we saw that yes, there were not supply lags were not there. And the virtuous cycle of public investment crowding in private investment is required. That means private investment is the need of the hour. That is totally correct. But public investment, government investment is also needed. Why? Because private investment is much more profit oriented right now, but public investment or government investment is much more welfare oriented. So it is for the longer period of time and for the masses. Okay. But also we cannot underestimate private investments, which are very much important, because private investments have come down in the last 4 to 5 years. That's not something we cannot undermine. Private investment. Public investment is of course going to take the lead. First, government has to do something. Then how will government do it? By providing incentives, tax breaks, it reduced corporate tax. All right. So all these will take the lead for the private investments to go along with the government. Moving on, the government had also made provision for over rupees 2 lakh crore for states and autonomous bodies towards capital expenditure. This is how the government is taking the lead. The National Infrastructure Pipeline that was launched in 2020 with projected infrastructure investment of around rupees 111 lakh crore during the financial year of 2020 to 2025 to build infrastructure in the country. Now, this National Infrastructure Pipeline was supposed to work for 5 years. Okay, it is supposed to work for 5 years, and through this the government made sure that infrastructure projects were to be given a boost. So government was very serious even before this budget, because fiscal consolidation is very important for the government. We will talk about that as well. NIP was launched with with the number of projects 6,835, which was later expanded to 9,000 projects covering 34 subsectors. So this is the gravity of the situation. If we talk about why the government is boosting, why is government pushing for infrastructure, I told you it is a multiplier effect. But the government was serious about this CAPEX expenditure before the budget of this year. And if we talk about surety bonds are also something that are going to be launched by the insurance companies. The IRDA, Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority, is going to launch it. What are surety bonds? Surety bonds are basically a legal binding contract between three parties. Okay, so I'm going to try to make you understand through this graph. Be very careful. I will be as lucid as possible for you. So three parties are there: the principal, obligee, and surety. These three people have entered into a contract, and this is legal and binding in nature, legally binding in nature. Obligee is generally the government agency, okay? And it requires that the principal purchase a bond to attain license or perform a service. Principal is generally a contractor or an establishment that wants to provide an infrastructural project, wants to take an infrastructural project, and these two will come into a bond. Now, principal, suppose Reliance, I'm just taking an example, Reliance will purchase the bond and agree to perform the work in a compliant manner, whatever the contract is obliging the principal to do, the Reliance company will do it. And obligee, that is the government, will make sure that the bond is actually working for the entire period of time whenever suppose the ongoing work, the infrastructure project is going on. And who will be the guarantor? Guarantor as in the insurance company. If any damage occurs, who will take care of that? That will be the surety. And this is the insurance company that guarantees that the work of the principal is done and it is liable for claims against the principal on the bond. Okay. So whenever any harm or any ill event occurs, if any aggrieved person will ask for claims, then surety bonds will come into the picture. Understood? Moving on, if we talk about this, so an alternative option to the guideline of seeking bank guarantees for infrastructure projects and replacing them with surety bonds. Now, this is a little tricky because surety bonds are very new in nature. And because of that, let's see if they are going to work properly in the infrastructure segment or not. Surety bonds are generally taken into consideration whenever infrastructure projects are there. Now, the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority has given a framework to replace the need for bank guarantees with surety bonds, and that will also help the liquidity to come back into the market, because we already know that how banks are overburdened with non-performing assets. Let's move on and talk about green bonds. Now, sovereign green bonds, of course, to finance climate projects, to finance an economy which is green and clean in nature, government will give sovereign green bonds through RBI, and it will be to mobilize resources at a part of the government's borrowing itself. Okay, and also extension of emergency credit linked scheme, guarantee scheme, it will help medium and small firms. Now, extended credit linked guarantee scheme, it was launched through the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan to help the micro, small and medium enterprises to get collateral free and sure loans. And that has helped a lot. If this scheme wasn't there, micro, small and medium enterprises, which provide a lot of employment to a lot of many people, which are important for export, the growth of exports, they would have collapsed. So extension through that, this is also a capital expenditure. Extension of this scheme has also been done. Let's move on and talk about the many objectives. What are the objectives? First, of course, money multiplier effect. It will create employment. Infrastructure projects, if I am supposed to build a road, I will take 10 people and I will pay them salary. They will be guaranteed a job. With whatever salary they are getting, they will have demands for certain things, and supply should also match that. So this is a multiplier effect. Not only that, but once the project is completed, skilled people will also come into the picture. That was unskilled. Skilled people to operate the infrastructure, to make IT segment a part of the bigger project will also be taken into consideration. Boost to infrastructure, job creation, I have already told you. Demand vis-a-vis supply. That means if we talk about demand, of course, if only demand side is given a lot of importance, inflation will occur, because if we create a lot of demand, many people will be asking for things which are scarce in nature because we haven't increased the supply. But if we increase the supply, if not more than, but significantly at par with the demand, of course, the boost to the economy will be quite, if not at all inflation free, but inflation will be less. It won't be too much money purchasing too few goods. Okay, and hand holding for MSMEs, I have already told you that MSMEs have formed a huge part of the economy, not only of the GDP, employment, but also export. So I told you how will that work. Now, if we talk about the challenges, first is crowding out effect. If the government only is investing in infrastructure projects, what about private companies? So crowding out basically means the government has taken such a huge chunk of the economy that the private sector has been crowded out. It does not have any place to invest. Although this might not be completely true, but yes, it might be a problem in the long term. If the government is borrowing so much from the economy, the private sectors will not have anywhere to borrow from. That is also another issue. Long-term debt, whatever debt the government might, create for financing the capital expenditure, government also needs money. Government will also provide bonds and national small savings schemes. Everything the government will provide, it is liable to pay it back to the citizens. Okay. Or whatever the external debt it is also creating, it is of course liable to pay it back. What about that? Do we have that much of capacity? We have to work through this as well. So fiscal consolidation, as I told you, I told you that we will talk about it. Fiscal consolidation is supposed to be 4.5% by the year 2024-25. This was the target. Okay. But right now the fiscal consolidation has come to like 6.9%. What is fiscal consolidation? That means the government should make a plan of fiscal expenditure in such a manner that it is not creating a lot of debt. It is not borrowing a lot. Its receipts should be, if not equal to, but a little less than expenditure. But if the government is not having any plan for fiscal consolidation, that will become a problem. If we are just borrowing and our revenue is also not, it's not matching the expenditure, that will create a problem. So we have to see how the government will finance these projects. And as government has reduced the corporate tax, it has not reduced the income tax. Income tax was the only solace for the government. But if it has reduced corporate tax, let's see if it is able to sustain its revenue receipts through income tax itself and the GST, of course. So one thing I forgot to tell you there, that what the analysts have said about reaching the fiscal consolidation of 4.5%, sharp corrections should not be made. The corrections should be such that right now we have 6.9%. Next year we will have 6.4%. Then after that we might have 6%. So like that we have to glide by the year 2024. But sharp correction will create a lot of issues for the economy. Trickle down impact, let's see if it will only reach the extreme points of the economy. That means either it will reach the unskilled laborers or it will reach the big corporates. What about those people who are in the middle? So we have to be careful about what segments of the economy will get the benefit of trickle down impact of infrastructure. Let's move on and talk about the way forward. So if we talk about the first way forward, we have to ensure smooth supply for demand. If I will spend a lot on capital, demand will be created because I am paying salaries. So many people will start demanding about things. But if I'm not supplying those commodities, it will create inflation. We have to check that. Privatization is something we have already known that how the government disinvested in. Finally, Air India got back to the Tatas. So privatization is a must in certain segments in which the government is getting huge losses. But the government cannot completely withdraw itself from the picture because our country right now is not totally at such a level that it can be totally exploited by the private segments. So private segments are a big part of the picture, but they cannot be the sole responsible people for the entire country. Okay. Then export-oriented approach should be there. We have to save our forex reserve. India has become the fourth largest foreign exchange reserve. According to the economic survey, we found that. So we have to take care that we do not go downhill from here, we only go uphill. We have to become Atmanirbhar and circular economy. That means the demand and supply should try to, we cannot completely cut our ties with the globe, but we have to go vocal for local. So incentives should be given for those who are a part of the circular economy, and that will go on a long road ahead. Private investments definitely should be given boost through incentives like the corporate tax, and foreign direct investments should also be welcomed. India is a country which has a huge potential, so that can also work. Digital rupee push, digital India push, and digital rupee push. Digital penetration should be consolidated first for giving a boost to digital rupee, because even in the villages we see right now, no proper connections are there. And digital rupee is going to be a huge part of the economy in the next 5 to 10 years. So for that, if we have to minimize the time range, we have to make sure that digital India reaches the villages also, and then only the proper benefits of maintaining digital rupee will happen. Okay. Now let's move forward and talk about our mains based question. You can practice this for better understanding. So CAPEX push has been the major focus of budget 22-23. Discuss the challenges and the way forward with respect to it in 250 words. Okay. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.